everyone, welcome to Watercolor Wednesday. I am Bonnie Krebs, creator of Watercolor the Art Impressions Way, and this week's project is a fall one, so we're still working our way through the new release from July, and I thought it would be fun to do a little fall scene. And this actually is from, let me just show you here, it's from the Harvest set, and we're only using one of these little stamps, so just this little pumpkin right here, and we're going to place that little pumpkin into the cart. So in addition to this one, we're going to need the flower cart set. So this one right here. We are also going to use the foliage from the spring basket. Now, you can use different ones that you have. You don't have this particular vine, go ahead and use something that you have. I chose this because of the wide leaf. So it's more of a broadleaf vine, and I thought it worked really well, but you know, there's a lot of things that you can use that will work equally well. We're also going to use one of the little branches from the branches set, this one right here. And then in the little mini flower set, we're going to use these little tiny dots here and this little one right here. Okay, so let's get going. This is really easy to do, and you know, it only requires a few stamps, and you'll notice on here that some of my pumpkins are blue, so I know that's not the traditional color, but I thought it would be kind of fun to make it a little more whimsical, and I actually own a few little blue pumpkins that I think are super cute. So if this bugs you and you just can't bring yourself to make blue pumpkins in a cart, feel free to make them all orange, because you can certainly do that and make this way more traditional. So that being said, let's get going and start creating this little painting. So we're going to start out by inking the cart, and we're just going to ink it in one color. So I'm going to ink it all up in the sepia. So just cover this whole thing. Remember to use the side of your marker, so you're not trying to color it with a point. And I see this all the time. People try to just use the point and color the image, and it will just take you forever if you try to do that. Okay, so I stamped that onto my watercolor paper, and the next step is always to dip your brush in water, pinch it off, and begin to pull the color out of the lines. And remember not to cross any of these lines, so you want to stay in your section. Stay in your section, and we're actually drawing this color over from where it's the darkest, and that would be the area farthest from you, so the edges. And you can see this has an angle, so this area right here is actually closest to us, so that will be the lightest area. And that just means that this is the darkest. So we're just dragging this color out and just kind of making a start here. And then we'll come back and add more color to it. Okay, so let's go on to the next step, and that's to add the little pumpkins into the cart. So I'm going to use my positioner, because there's no way I can guess and get these into the right place. So I'm going to stamp this on here first. I'm going to use the sepia and just ink this little guy up. And I'm going to stamp that right into the corner. Just flush like that, and I can see exactly where I'm going to place that little pumpkin. Now you can see that if I don't cover this little cart, I'm going to stamp right over the top of that line, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to take some of my Post-it tape and just cover the edge like this, and I'll just take another little piece and just cover this one here. Okay, so now I've got this all covered up. I'm not going to be stamping over the top of that cart. I'm going to keep this inside, and I'm just going to put it in here just like this. That looks good. So I can just huff on that and just stamp it in there. Okay, so now I'm going to place another one in, and so now I need to cover this little pumpkin. And so I've cut a few of these little pumpkin masks just to make sure that I'm not stamping over the top. So I'm going to ink this up again. And be careful that you're not, pressing too hard on these. You don't want a really dark, thick line, especially with these small images. So you want to make sure just even pressure. Don't just, mash that into your paper. Just even pressure. Okay, so let's place the next one in here, and maybe down a little bit like this. That looks pretty good. So I've got the second one in. Now I'm going to cover that one because I want to stamp another one in behind these two. Okay, so let's put another one in here. And maybe let's make this a little more interesting and turn this a little bit like this one. Place that back in the corner. And I can huff on this since I only stamped it one time. Put that back in there. And I've still got some space in my little card, so I want to add another one in here, and maybe this time turn it so it's a little more interesting this way. So just like that, and I'm going to ink it up again this time. And just place this back in the corner like so. And then maybe one more back in here. I think I can fit one more back in the back. So maybe just like this. And I want to cover up this one for sure. And I can probably take this one. Oops. Should have done this first. Actually, let's just do that let's just do it the right way. So let's cover this one, and let's cover this one. And now let's place this over here and place it where we want it. And stamp that right in there. And now we can remove all of our masks, and we've got our little pumpkins all in the cart. Okay, just like that. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to go through here now and just pull some of this color out of the lines. Just drag this color out. Make sure that you are leaving a highlight because these areas are all rounded, so they're contours. So we want to see a highlight on them. And remember to stay in your sections, even if they're small. Stay in each individual section. And just pull this color out. The tops, the tops of the image, we also want to leave a highlight there. So the biggest thing about these little paintings is that you don't color everything in solid. You don't want the same color line to line. That's going to take away the three-dimensional look. It's going to make your image look flat. And so you want to see those highlights on here and make sure that you can see that these edges are rounded. Okay, and I'm just going to come back in here now and darken in some of these lines on these little vines here. And just make sure those are really, really dark. And we can do some more of that too at the end. Okay, so let's go on to the next step and let's add some color now. So I'm going to add some Prussian blue to my palette and dip my brush and just add a little water to it. So I'm going to really blend this out a little bit and just put a little color onto my little cart. Start where it's the darkest and drag it over to where it's the lightest. I want to make sure that that corner is light and that dark back here, on the edges, that's where it's the darkest. And I'm going to just put a little line back here. And you can see how that creates a back on this cart. So the little handle comes over and we have a little bar across the back. I'm going to take my fine tip now and really darken in the back of this wheel. That's going to push that back into the background. Anytime you can go dark to light like this, it's going to create more dimension. Okay, that looks good. So let's take a little of this blue now and add it to some of these pumpkins. So fun. Start where it's the darkest again, so down in these creases. Make sure, because these are contours, that you're leaving a little highlight. It doesn't have to be huge. You just have to be able to see it. And the top area, try to leave a highlight up there too. And just start out with it really, really light. You know, you can always come back in and add more color. And stay in your section. Do each section at a time. Just take your time. And like I said, if you want to make these all orange, you certainly can do that. Okay, so speaking of orange, let's add a little orange now to it. So this is the number 7. It's a really bright orange. And let's add some now to these pumpkins. And see the top of this little image right here? You want to make sure that that is showing a highlight, so no color. This one too, it's kind of laying on its side. So I want to make sure that you can see that highlight on the top. And then as soon as it's dry, you can go back in again and add a little more color, and it's going to get darker. So the more passes that you make, the darker it's going to get. That's why it's really important to keep it light to start. Just keep it light. And then you can always go back in. The more times you go back in, the more passes that you make, the darker it's going to get. Okay, that looks good. Let's go on. And let's go on to the next step. And let's just put a little detail into this little cart. Just add some smaller little boards in here. I'm just doing it with my fine tip. Just kind of break it up a little bit. Okay, so let's add our little pumpkins to the ground now. So I'm going to just ink these up. I'm going to use my positioner again, just to make sure that I have everything in the right place. And let me just grab my little shield here. So I think I will put one over here. Right next to the cart here. And maybe turn it a little bit. And I'm going to take off a little bit of the bottom because I want to put it into the leaves and the foliage. So I'm just going to take a little bit off of there like that. And then I'm going to put another one over here in the back. So let's see, where's a good place? That looks pretty good right there. And again, I'm going to do the same. Take some of that ink off of the bottom. Just so that I'm not stamping over that line. I'm not fighting that line of the pumpkin. Okay, that looks good. Let's pull some of this color out of the lines. And again, same thing. Start where it's going to be the darkest, and that would be in these creases. And then make sure that you're showing that highlight. This sepia color is what's making these pumpkins look three-dimensional. Don't forget to start with that, because you can't just ink an orange pumpkin in orange. It's just not going to work. You have to ink it in sepia and then add the orange color to it. And that's how to make it look three-dimensional. Okay, speaking of orange, let's go ahead and add the orange to it. And again, we're adding it exactly the way that we pulled the color out of the line, so darkest to lightest. Stay in your sections. And even though it's the same stamp, it changes and it looks different because of the way that you're adding the color to it. No two are going to look the same, just because of the way that you add the color. It's going to change. And that's what makes these so versatile. You don't have to have a million stamps that are pumpkins. You can have one or two different sizes, and you can change them so much. Let's make this a little bit darker here. These little dried up stems. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our foliage in here now. And I've got this vine, and you can see it's pretty long, so I don't need the whole thing. I'm just going to ink about 4 leaves. And move this out of the way so I have enough room. 4 or 5 leaves. This looks pretty good. And just start putting this into the ground. And just turn it. Just like this. And just keep kind of turning it. Just randomly put it here and there. So you're kind of, you know, look, we're creating a little leafy field where these pumpkins are growing. So it's very random. And then let's add a little water to it. And just blend it out. Just kind of jump your brush around. Remember, this is how we add water to foliages and flowers, is just jumping your brush around, just softening where we just stamped. So fun. And let's just add a little more color in. So I'm adding this is number 72 that I'm using, that I used on that little vine. And I'm going to take a little bit of this and really darken. Just put a little bit of this in underneath these pumpkins. And a little bit under the cart. So just dabbing it in a little bit here and there. I'm going to take some of the Prussian blue now and really water that down and add a little sky in here. So this is the same color, same Prussian blue. And blue and orange are complementary, so they always look good together. And I love this warm blue. Don't let your sky get out of control. Just keep it, you know, in this area. Remember, think about your image, you know, in a circle or an oval. And don't let your sky kind of go off the page. Okay, let's do a couple more things here. So let's just add another detail. And I'm going to ink this little branch and just stamp it in here, maybe once or twice. Maybe another one over here. Make it look a little more fall. You can also, you know, widen this a little bit down below. So if you want it to look like it's a little more substantial, like maybe it's a little dried up tree, just widen the bottom of it and make it a little darker. Don't add any water to these. You don't need to add any water to these little dried twigs. They should be more like an accent. And then let's add these little dots in here. Look like they're little dried up blooms in the fall. And that looks pretty good. We are about finished. Just look it over and see if you need to add any color anywhere. I usually always go back over it, especially with my fine tip, and just see if there's anywhere that I could add some extra lines that maybe got washed out a little bit. In between these little pumpkins, if you just kind of make a dark little dot in here, it will separate them a little bit, create a little bit of a shadow. And I'm using the sepia, so the fine tip. And just kind of going over all of this. And I think we are about finished. The last thing to do is sign and date. And put it on a card or put it in a frame and give it away to someone. You're going to make their day. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and I will see you all next week.